Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan. I am going to just tell you I'm doing an additional episode with a therapist that I met pretty recently who came on, and we just clicked. Like, I love Carolyn. So I reached out to her over the weekend, or one of us reached out, and I asked her right away, would you do me a huge favor and come on and do a podcast to talk about, you know, the PTSD, the trauma that survivors of these fires might be feeling, and get some ideas and ask her some questions. I have done one other episode since this has happened. So we're on, what day are we? I had to ask somebody today. I was like, what day are we even on? Today is a Monday. I'm making up a new day because it's all mushed together. Yep. It's devastating, Carolyn. I mean, I'm not even affected by these fires per se. I did one other episode, I guess, on like Friday of last week. And I had a spiritual healer and a shaman, shamanic healer come on, which was random. I had that guest planned, and it was really great to talk to her. But I don't know. I feel like drooling in a corner because I have not specifically been like, I'm so grateful. I have my home. I live in Manhattan Beach. We really were just dealing with smoke, but I have several friends that have lost their homes. And I'm going to say before I let you talk, because I love to hear myself talk, it's really incredibly emotional. Because I feel like I have almost survivor's guilt of our home. Like, we're all living in this little community in LA, and we're being, you know, we're all fine. But then you drive, because I drove to drop off clothes over the weekend to somebody. And it was like I drove into this cloud of smoke with people carrying signs like somebody was looking for their dog was lost. It's like, I feel like I watch The Walking Dead. I feel like I'm in The Walking Dead when I drive out of my little town. And then when I'm driving around town this morning, we have about 35 families coming to my youngest daughter's school. And I was there helping with something. And I guess I had just missed them all coming in. But I don't know. It's like, what do we say? So that's why I wanted you to come on, because not only selfishly am I like, what do we do? What is somebody that is bordering LA that wasn't affected? What are the right things to say and do for those that are? Which, P.S., LA is, I love my state. So whoever's going to come for us, do not, because you're messing with the wrong girl. And this is my home for 25 years. We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
So I'm going to stop babbling, and I'm going to let you say what you want to say, and then don't worry, I'll interrupt you right away.
Okay. So you're not babbling at all. And babbling or talking and letting yourself free flow is exactly what you and all of the survivors down in Southern California and the extension, all of California, and by extension, anybody who has lived with wildfires or forest fires or home fires needs to do, because your brain is trying to process something that is impossible. And, you know, you can be warned, you can be told that you live in an area with drought and with, you know, forests, and that there's risk, but it is just something that we don't imagine. You can't imagine. You can't live in that kind of state of, what if my house burns down? What if my neighborhood you can't live there. So you are contending mentally with something that is unimaginable. And that is really what causes quote unquote trauma, by the narrowest definition, going through psychological trauma is going through something where we might lose our life. And that certainly exists for people that are, whose homes have burned down or who have been trapped or all of those sorts of circumstances. That is a very real trauma. But I also expand trauma to mean, and lots of people do, emotionally, to go through something that is too big for your brain to process in real time is what causes our brain to sort of glitch and get stuck there. And so you are living that right now. We are, to a certain extent, anybody with empathy and compassion is living that. To watch people on the news who are running from fire, to see, for me, I'm a horse person, to see horses running. And, there's a video that's made the rounds of a horse going back to bring back other horses.
I posted it.
Oh, did you? Okay,
I don't know if you know this about me because maybe I didn't tell you. P.S. I didn't even introduce you. That's how out of it my brain is right now.
You don't. This isn't about me.
Huge animal. Like I prefer animals to people is my joke. I love animals. And so seeing these animals and finding animals before you finish your thought, please, can you tell my audience who you are? I forgot to say.
This isn't about me,
but we do want to introduce you properly. So people that are listening and didn't listen to the last episode, by the way, that's how my brain is right now. It's just jumping and I already have ADHD, so that's even worse. So Carolyn Sharp is a licensed therapist.
Licensed clinical social worker. Yeah.
Okay. And you also have a book coming out. We can talk about that at the end. But I wanted people to know that I have an actual therapist, a real therapist that has become my new friend on the podcast. Yes. And I didn't say that. I was just like, "What's up, everyone? Here's Carolyn." Finish your thought though, because I didn't want to interrupt about the animal. We left off at the animal part.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anybody that is watching this that has a human heart that feels compassion and feels empathy is going through this, watching it on the news, watching it on social media. We're all having experiences. And I'm someone who, we have a house in the mountains in Washington. We almost lost our house to a forest fire and had to evacuate. We were there when the fire started and had to leave and saw the fire. So and that's like an incredibly privileged. I went to my home in the city, and so it is nothing even remotely like, but I know that feeling, that pit in the stomach feeling of seeing flames and all of that sort of stuff. So I have and I'm making for those that are just listening, I'm making a tiny little centimeter gesture with my two fingers of some piece of what people are experiencing. And so as a result, when I watch it, I get that nauseated feeling of, oh God. And so your brain, as you are picking up your daughter from school, as you are watching things, as the phone rings, is this another evacuation order? Is the fire getting closer? Does a friend need a place to stay? Has someone died? That is what you are living. And that is what the people all around Southern California, and by extension, most of California, are going through right now. And it is so important for you to babble and to talk about it, because we are verbal creatures. And by verbal, I just mean language-based creatures. So whether you are, a person who doesn't speak or write, we are still a language-oriented person. And so we heal and process through language, whatever our particular language is. So it's critically important that for those that are experiencing an emotional upheaval as a result of this, whether you have direct trauma or secondary trauma or are just feeling a lot, it's so critically important to talk about it to a therapist. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be to a pastor. It can be to a friend. It can be to a teacher or a colleague. It can be to anybody, to talk and talk and talk, or paint or draw or play, that was a terrible air guitar gesture that I just made on the screen.
I got it. I understood it.
There you go. As you can tell, I'm not a musician. Anyway, any artistic expression to express whatever it is that is spinning around in your brain.
Okay. So my second question, my second little thing I want to talk about is, so I talked about the guilt, the survivor's guilt. Mm-hmm. What I can equate this to for the listeners that I'm hoping I have listeners that might be listening to podcasts that maybe, are survivors. A lot of my listeners come here because they're grieving. This is a form of grief. I can tell you, I have not felt this way since September 11th. It kind of makes you feel that same feeling of, I'll remember when the towers fell and we were in LA and that was in New York. And I remember getting in my car. I had a Jeep Wrangler at the time. The top was down and I was dating my now husband. I got on the freeway and I drove to the place he was staying. And I remember thinking, are we going to get attacked? Is there something going to come out of the sky and get us now? It's kind of the same kind of feeling where you're like, are these winds going to shift? Is somebody going to... Because they're saying some of this was arson, by the way. So if you're listening and you live in another country or wherever you're listening in the United States, the big fires, they still don't know for sure, but they think the Palisades was electrical, and they think the other one, the Eaton fire, they don't know for sure. But there are arson fires in between that have been lit, which is horrifically awful. I can't even explain to you the things I've heard. On top of that, so you have this horrible fear of, oh my God, is my town next? Is my kid's school? I'm going to get upset. Could it be next? Mm-hmm. And for somebody that already has so much PTSD, it's very hard for people to understand. So what I'm trying to say is, when people are listening in other states or wherever they are and they're attacking Los Angeles, you have to understand that, yes, I've had people come on my Instagram and say, well, what about Gaza? All of it's so sad. I understand our country, our world is at war in so many places. But please, if you're listening and you're angry about politics or you're angry about whatever, don't attack people that live in LA or Southern California right now. We truly have that same kind of PTSD feeling of what it felt like. So that's what I'm trying to explain to people, that it's that same feeling of wanting to flee, not knowing if you should flee, staying put, worrying that these winds are going to kick back up again, and then it's going to spread everywhere. So that's what I was going to say about that feeling that we feel. But also, if you are a survivor of these fires, which I have a couple, one of my good friends lost her house. It's the second time it's happened to her. So she lost her house this time. First time Malibu, missed her house. This time her house burnt down. And she's feeling these feelings of I'll text her. I went and said, what can I do? We're all joining together. That's what I'll tell you. It's pretty amazing to see. Mm-hmm. But what, saying the right thing to someone, mm-hmm. It's kind of like when someone dies and you feel guilty because you're well, your husband died, but I still have my husband. It's all of these things. So that's what I want to ask you in my jumbled up way. So any thoughts on what I just rambled off on?
Well, you said a lot of really critical things.
Okay.
And let me see if I should work forwards or backwards. I mean, I think that, first to your point about attacking LA, I think that there is a critical lack of empathy out in the world for people going through things. Mm-hmm. I think empathy and compassion have become politicized, that you're only allowed so much compassion either to give or to receive it. And it somehow falls along political lines. And that if you've taken a political stance of X or Y, using Gaza as the example, then you shouldn't complain about fires or, miscarriage or whatever. And it is so harmful to all of us to take that very binary, limited stance. There is no limit to the potential for compassion and to be, sort of woo-woo, which, as I'm a native New Yorker, all the way on the other side of the coast, and I'm a little bit rough around the edges, but there is no limit to our capacity for love. Mm-hmm. And it benefits us so much to lean into care for one another as humans, whether we agree along political lines or don't. And so to weaponize fires, to politicize fires is so harmful to all of us. And anyone all of the people going through this deserve just love and compassion and care. And, social media is, there's lots that's going on right now where, there are people that use social media to cry into the camera, and there's lots of commentary about that. Mm-hmm. Two famous people that lost their house, Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag, who are reality stars who've made their money, you could argue, off of social media. They have suffered a trauma, and they need to talk about it. And if their form of talking about it is into the camera, I'm so glad that they're finding access through that to be able to process the trauma and the grief that they're experiencing, because they are human beings that have lost a lot and nearly could have lost their lives easily if they were asleep when it happened or didn't hear the call to evacuate or whatever. And so they have been traumatized.
Can I just say one thing about that? Because it does infuriate me, actually. I'm going to rant for a second. The fact that people are Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag, I'm old enough I watched Laguna Hills. They drove me crazy. I was like, oh my God, all of that reality TV stuff happened, in my, I don't even know how many years ago was that, 20 years ago. So it's still fairly young.
We don't need to
age ourselves.
We don't need to say.
I get it. People are like, oh God. But honestly, why does it matter how you express yourself? If you're going to go on camera, I think that the intention behind it is, I think with them is to help other people, but also help themselves. And they've grown up in this social media this is their world. This is what they know. So I think people really have to have compassion. My other thought on this is be attacking people for what they do and do not have. So my friend has a lot.
That the wealthy, celebrities are not allowed to grieve. They're not allowed to be traumatized because they could buy themselves new things.
People are attacking them at a point, and it's not and I got attacked, by the way. I have a post up right now saying something all of these, you probably might have seen it. All of these people had, if they had a home and you had a little area where you had, and stairs, you all watched your baby walk up those stairs for the first time, or you saw your kid go up to prom, or all of these people. I'm sorry, guys. So had lives that mattered, and we should not absolutely under any circumstances be attacking people because they have money. You don't know how they have their money. They could have freaking worked their asses off. And you're talking to somebody, by the way, that does believe in equality. And I do think the fires need more coverage in Eaton and different places, because there is such a thing as generational wealth, and there is inequality in our country. But by attacking those that have a lot and saying that if they lost their house, that oh well, what about these people? What about Gaza? Right. All you're doing is enraging everybody. Everybody's angry. So if you live in LA right now, there's I'm worried there's going to be fights for the haves and have-nots, and it shouldn't be about that. It should be all of us joining together to help each other, and there is right now that going on. So I will tell you that. But I also know there's a great deal of anger, because I've been reading about it, in the LA Times, about Eaton not feeling like they're getting, and I get that. I get it. But everybody has, if you are fortunate to have a home and a roof over your head, you have a family, you have memories, you have boxes of pictures. I have a dear friend that lost her house, like I talked about, and she's very fortunate. And she has guilt over being so fortunate. So she'll say stuff like, well, I guess I shouldn't feel this way because there's this, but I just don't think that that's fair, right?
Right. Absolutely. Human emotion doesn't differentiate between someone that has money and someone that doesn't. Pain, suffering does not differentiate between people who have things or people who voted one way or voted another. Everybody has pain in their life and everybody deserves compassion for that. Even when, we make a mistake, and you're the parent of a teenager, I'm the parent of young adults who make stupid mistakes that cause themselves, they cause themselves harm. They still deserve care and sympathy of, it sucks that you failed a test, that you got kicked out of a party, that you crashed your car, that whatever it is, they still deserve care to help learn from that reality. And this, you only deserve care, you only deserve our sympathy, our empathy if you fall into these categories is the basis of how people are getting dehumanized. And the very basis, in our last conversation, I said that I wrote my book because I feel like that all the problems in the world are a failure of relationship. And this is the moment where there's an opportunity to build relationship rather than contribute to more chasms growing, more distance growing between differences of people that, soon there's going to be, well, you didn't live through it, so you don't get to speak to it.
Yeah.
That isn't helpful either. I lost friends, or I had friends who lost things. And so I'm really emotional about it. If you feel it, you get to speak about it. You shouldn't take up, there was a great article in the LA Times, and this was a decade ago, probably. And it was called Care In and Dump Out. And that's probably not the article title, but it was a fantastic article about how to provide care to someone who's going through something. And I think the examples they gave were cancer treatment and divorce, that the care should go in the direction closest to the person experiencing it. So someone who, in this circumstance, narrowly escaped the fire, lost their home. Care should go in that direction, and the dumping, the complaining about the experience or of caring for someone or being close to that needs to go away from that person. So like a spouse of a person going through cancer treatment shouldn't complain to the person going through cancer treatment about how stressful the cancer is. They have less experience. And so when you're needing to vent about the stress of dealing with someone who's going through the fires, or the trauma of the fires, take that further out, if that makes sense. So I'm not articulating this very well.
No, you totally are. And also I was thinking in my my brain right now that's only, I think, half functioning is, I interrupted you on your story about hype because I'm just so passionate about that topic of, just attacking people. And I think, like you're kind of talking, but we're just talking about this right now is, I think that we just have to be so careful, like in general, like in life in general, with the new administration, wherever you stand politically, there's scary things going on. And so I'm having like PTSD about all of it. I think there's a lot of people that are my listeners that are as well. So I don't know. I don't even know what to say because I really wanted you to finish your thought about the original thing as well. And then I veered off into the interruption land that I like to do.
Well, and my brain is, on a given day is only operating at about 75%. So
you're
now
way
I don't
higher
remember
than me.
what the original thing was that I was talking about, because I can meander like the best of them. And I'm in Massachusetts, far, far away from Southern California.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and because I'm going to now go into another topic. If you're a listener, maybe we'll swing back around at the end and remember, because my brain does that sometimes. I want to know if you are affected by the fires in any way, or you actually lost your house, okay, and you're listening right now. on top of losing everything, right? And you might have run out of your house because there's people like that and left animals. And for animal lovers like us, that's your family. So in my opinion, you lost your family. So I have heard of several people that happened to. Or you ran out of your house with the shirt on your back. And now there's all these people giving you clothes and resources. And they're saying, well, why don't you call this person for insurance? Or why don't you call that person? I really wanted to say this on the podcast because I think it's important, because a dear friend of mine lived through the Malibu fires. And she said that there were all kinds of scams going on and people were signing documents. So if you're listening to this and you happen to be in Los Angeles and you're listening to this podcast because maybe you found a mental health podcast and you just decided to listen to mine, be so careful. I wanted to add, there's Facebook groups. So that I think there's a Malibu Facebook group. It's about like people that survived the Malibu fires and can give you join and give you really good information. Do not sign things, because what happened in the Malibu fires is people lost their homes for a second time. There's all kinds of corruption, and people are always, sadly, in life, there's bad people out there, and they're going to prey on people when they're down. So be careful of that. Also, I want to add, if you are looking for a place to live, and my husband and a lot of realtors are doing the service for free to try and help people get in apartments or get in housing, because we've lost 10,000 structures. 10,000. So 10,000 structures, that's homes, buildings, whatever, are gone. Think about how many people now are homeless. So there's landlords listing their houses and they're gouging their pricing up because they know that people are going, well, I need to get a place to live. That's against the law. You cannot, you have to report that. So if you're listening and you're a parent or something and you have a child or you know somebody trying to find something, be so careful with that. But there are so many resources. If you're following me on Instagram, I'm trying really hard to only post reliable information, and I'm vetting stuff, but even I make mistakes. So I think it's like anything else, you have to vet stuff like nobody's business. Unfortunately, that's another thing you have to add onto your pile of stuff that you have to worry about. But I was going to say to that, those little two things, can you discuss that, what people should do? Because that's also an additional layer. So your house is burnt down. You're walking around, you lost a dog. You're walking around in clothes that don't belong to you that you got at the flea market because there's all these generous people helping, which is amazing. Yep. And then you're like, okay, I still can't even get to my property to see if my house is standing. And I don't even want to live there, to be honest, if it is, because every other house on my street has burnt to the ground and I have nowhere to do grocery shopping. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, first, there are, I know in my profession, there are already lists compiling of therapists willing to give pro bono hours. So there are lists compiling, and I would imagine there are lawyers that are doing the same, creating lists of lawyers who are willing to give pro bono hours. So don't feel like, to all the listeners that are going through this crisis, you have to do this alone. There are lots of people really eager to help, which is why when Meghan reached out to me, I was like, yes, sign me up. Let's talk about this. Let me be of value in some tiny way. Mm-hmm. Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. This is the key thing, is look for people that are there to help. And, I would even venture to say to reach out to your networks outside of the area, outside of the state, that have a little bit more bandwidth, that are clearer thinking, because everybody in your network and in your neighborhood is all scrambling for what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And is in that fight or flight situation right now where your nervous system hasn't calmed down. You're still in the thick of it, even though you have survived. You know where you're at right now. Maybe you have a place to stay. Hopefully. But your nervous system is still in fight or flight. So your brain isn't functioning and the people around you may not be functioning. So reach out to family and friends outside of your network or to any of all over my social media. I'm sure all over social media in general are the phone numbers to call for housing support, for animal support. Here are the legal aid numbers to call. And they're compiling lists of lawyers that can help navigate so that if someone puts a piece of paper in front of you, you're not trying to discern, do I sign it, do I not? You go to an attorney or, email an attorney or whatever and show them the document and they can advise you. Don't feel like you need to do this on your own because that is impossible. Take your time. Don't rush through things.
What do you think about people that are like saying stuff like, oh, I'm leaving. I'm going to go leave the state. Is that running away? I mean, I really mean this because there's people that are like, we do. We have climate change caused this. Let's be real. I mean, those winds, and they're saying the Palisades one, and we don't know yet. There's not been the full investigation, but they were like hurricane force winds with an electrical power thing is what they think. And those embers were just spreading and spreading and spreading. So that's how all of it burned. And then I think people here are like, wait a minute. I can't stay here, but where do I go? I'm leaving now. And they're making kind of rash decisions. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? Like, would you tell somebody, do what you need to do? Or what would you say to somebody that's saying, I need to leave. I'm leaving California.
Well, there's the, what do I do right now? And there's what do I do long term?
Okay.
And lots of people may feel the need to get away from the pain of being in their neighborhood and being surrounded by this crisis and get themselves to a family member's in wherever, Texas or Montana or wherever their family member is, to recover, breathe, reset. It's like the cliche, the expression, don't go to the grocery store hungry. You don't want to be making a decision in crisis because you don't have your full faculties. Nobody does. Mm-hmm. You're not able to think, short-term, long-term, factory in everything. And so, what I would say about that is don't make a long-term decision when you're still in the middle of, the crisis. Wait until you are calmer, wait till you've recovered, wait until everything settles out so that the situation. But beyond that, if you want to move because it's too painful or you're, scared of climate change or whatever it is, then I think that that's a fair decision to make. But you should take some time to make sure you're not making it out of fear or anger, because we don't make our best decisions when we're right in the middle of a crisis.
So if somebody were to come to you, okay, and they're like, they just lost their house and they're sitting here and they're like, because this is going to affect everybody. It's a trickle down thing. So I felt guilty over the weekend. I'm going to be real. I went and got my nails done at one point. I did a bunch of volunteering. I drove all over the place. And I went into this nail salon because I really needed my nails done. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a little, excuse my language, shit. I'm sitting here getting my nails done. Why am I doing this? There's people that are homeless right now. How, talk to me about that. What can people do? And if it's somebody that's newly lost their home, which I would consider a death. Right?
100%. Absolutely.
So, it's kind of I remember when I lost my best friend and we were all, I've told this story on the podcast before. But we were all in the car the next day with her mom and her mom was in complete shock, right? Just the way she went, horrific. And it was Julie's mom and I think her sister, me and our other best friend, Kara, in the car. And we were just like driving down the street and we started laughing and like joking about something with Julie. And I've been through loss enough to know that that's okay to do. But I think a lot of people, like I just told the nail story and I'm not directly connected. I didn't lose my home. What would you say to survivors that are like, why am I sitting here laughing? Why am I doing this? Or like 1 minute they might be like, I'm totally fine. I'm great. And then the next minute, what do you say? What would you say to that person?
Okay. So I use a very crude term that is swearing. I can swear on this podcast.
You have before. Right? Otherwise I wouldn't have you back, sister.
I always check.
No, I love a good swear word.
Okay. So now. I say this, and this is super, super crass. I call grief a motherfucker because one day you feel totally fine. You are laughing and being silly. And the next day, the next minute, you're on your knees, unable to breathe. There is almost none. 0.001, this isn't a scientific percent of predictability to grief. And losing a house is like losing a family member, like almost exactly, because you've built a life in this structure, in this home. Whether you own the home or rent the home, it doesn't matter. When you create a home and you lose that home, it is a loss. It is a death of sorts. And so going through it, there is no predictability. And when I say I had friends who were lost on the Alaska Airlines flight from Puerto Vallarta to, I think it stopped in San Francisco and then continued on to Seattle. And I was with their daughters. It was parents of friends of mine.
I remember that. I'm so sorry. I do remember that. Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of the daughters and she was saying to me, I feel okay in this moment. I feel okay. Well, that's fine because you're going to feel like shit again in a second. So if you feel like you can shower. If you can feel like and can enjoy getting your nails done, get your fucking nails done. Because in 5 minutes, you're not going to be able to, you're going to be drooling and crying and snot running out of your face and unable to form a sentence or a thought. Live, because we have to. Your brain needs the rest. Your heart needs the rest. You know, do what feels good in the moments that they feel good, because you're going to feel like absolute shit in another 30 seconds. And, you know, I mean, your friend wouldn't want you to be miserable all the time. She would be, and, you know, depending on how woo-woo you go, that may have been your friend making all of you crack up.
I'm pretty woo-woo. I just had that shamanic therapist on talking about the spirit guides. So I think you came to the right place. Yeah, I'm sure she was in the car with us. I'm sure of it.
Yes. Yeah. And I lost my best friend as well to cancer way too young.
I knew I loved you. There's a reason why we're like friends now and we met. Thank you, Beth Grossman. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Always thank you, Beth Grossman. And there have been many times where she has shown up and it is clear as day that is her in the room on the, you know, and I've had other people who just show up and it's, you know, enjoy it when you have it. You know, the moment where if you could get you have the privilege of getting your nails done, then right on. Taking a bath, taking a walk, laughing, eating food, whatever it is, enjoy it because you're going to feel like trash very soon again. And there's the trademark dark, direct New Yorker that's hard is coming any second. Take pleasure, take joy where you could find it.
I was going to ask you this. So I'm going to use myself as an example yet again. So we have new families coming into our school. So like I said, we're like this little bubble. That's what we call our town, the bubble. So that's why I'm saying you have to like get on the freeway to drive to different parts. So LA's like this, I mean, Los Angeles is huge. I'm sure you've been here. And if you're listening and you haven't, it's not like in the movies, like one little city. It's kind of like spread out like little pockets all over the place. So that's why they're saying like the Eaton fire is a big one. There was a Sylmar fire. There's the Palisades fire. I live on the coast, so I'm in another beach town. And the Palisades families, some of them are coming to our school. So I think we have like 35 families coming in. And like I said this morning, I was like sorting uniforms that we're donating to the new kids. And I miss them coming in, but they kind of sent a list out to the existing families on what to say. So I'm a mom and I have a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old, and I want to know the right things for us to tell our children that are now around. Like, not only do they have these parents, which I can't even imagine, but you now have PTSD as a child, like that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. Your house burning down is, like we said, it's like a death. So these kids now all have PTSD in their lives because they've lost everything. So what would you say to people that are like me and my family that have all these other families coming in on the right ways to approach it and what to say and not say?
Mm-hmm. The most important thing is to create space for each person to process it as they need to. And before you do that, you want to know whether you have capacity for it. Not everybody's good at everything. Yeah. So if you're a baker and your way of helping is baking cookies for the school, but you can't talk about it because you get too freaked out, or maybe you had a fire as a child and so you can't do it, that's okay. Don't feel bad about what capacity you have. Help where you can and recognize I'm not good at this other thing. I can't make space for defying gravity or there's a wicked reference. My daughter would love that. Wicked See, there we go, though. It's okay to have humor. You just said it. Go ahead. There you go. Yeah. But you want to, if you have capacity to make space for people's feelings, the most important thing to do is to just make space. It's not about saying the right thing. And this is where we trip ourselves up. I've got to know what to say. You really don't need to say anything. And there isn't really anything you can say. Like, don't try to turn this shit on the bright side of, well, like you didn't like that kitchen. So now you get a new kitchen. Don't say things. Just create space and listen to whatever your family needs to talk about, and validate whatever it is that they're sharing with you. It makes sense that you're scared. It makes sense that you're angry. I understand that sounds hard. Be empathetic of just reflecting what you're hearing. Don't say anything beyond that is what I would tell the sort of beginning listeners out there, the friends and family. Make space for people to process what's in their head, and maybe they're over processing the details. That's how their brain is making sense of it. Like, whose fault is it? Did we not water our lawn enough? Or is it the city's fault because they didn't trim okay, so you're trying to figure out how this happened. It makes sense that you're doing that. That's all you need to say or do, is just create space for your friend to talk about it, or the family member. And don't engage it in trying to, let's Google whose fault is it. Don't engage with it, because that's not actually what needs to happen here. They're just trying to process and dump out what's in their brain right now. That's the value of friendship, is making that space for them to process. For children, because they don't have the verbal skills, they don't have the words yet that we do, give them a box of crayons and some paper and let them draw whatever they need to. Let them build with blocks and knock them over, or, like color the blocks red because that represent flint. Let kids play and reflect similarly. Make the space for them to play in any way that they need to without freaking out if they do violent play, if they do fire play. That's their brains processing it. And reflect what you see of, that building's on fire. That must be scary. Help them put words to their experience through play, because those are children's words. So depending on, I don't know what age your school is and what age these children are, their age
is like all the way from for kindergarten to 8th grade.
Okay. Yeah. So the 8th graders have words, obviously. They may draw as well, or they may whatever, sing or paint or whatever, but they also have the ability to write and speak. And so you want to, then the same instruction is true for kids that can talk about it. Great. But little kids don't talk as much, they play more. And so creating the space for them to talk through their experiences, what will make the difference for them as they grow older, having it not be stuck. And that's, you said these are kids that are going to live with PTSD their whole life. Yes and no, not necessarily. They don't need to have this be some huge
like I'm putting
shadow.
It on them. Yeah, I hear you.
They can process it through if we give them the space, if we create the space for them to process it, rather than we don't talk about that now, or, get over it, or look on the bright side. If we try and move them through it too fast, that's when shit gets stuck in us, when we're told you're not supposed to talk about that, or you're supposed to be grateful. Even the most privileged, I think Mel Gibson's house burned down. He's got gajillion dollars. Even he needs to process his grief. And he is. I've seen clips of Mel Gibson, and he is processing his anger and his
great example, Carolyn. Great example.
He's processing some feelings on the news, and I am happy that he is. We need to not take Mel Gibson's words literally, because there is a lot of emotion in there that needs to be recognized, as Mel Gibson is rightfully very angry that this has happened. Where he puts his, like feeling our feelings is fine. We don't need to put them on someone that it's, for example, wild example, Gavin Newsom's fault, or the electric company's fault, or the firefighters' fault for not, what, and I didn't watch all of what Mel Gibson said, so I don't want to use him
I think it's
literally, but
I think it's a valid example though of like people are finger pointing, they're angry. I mean, don't get me started. I would be losing my marbles if I were walking around. And then I also, like I brought up in the beginning, I have survivor's guilt. I think because I don't think a lot of people where I live have driven into those areas to know what a war zone it looks like, to understand. So people are probably like it's just how people deal with stuff. They don't really want to realize bad things, right? So it's like when somebody dies, for example, and then I can just talk to this because I've gone through it with my dad, or I use my dad. And it was like when my dad died, everybody was like over at our house dropping off like food and, all this stuff. And everyone was there for us in the beginning. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, it's been a year. Like, I don't need you right now. And I would equate that as the same thing for these victims, because now it's like they're like the hot topic. Everybody's doing donations. Everyone's doing this. They haven't even had time for their brains to process what's happening. And then what will happen, it's the human condition. Like, people don't want to be reminded that we're mortal in some ways, or maybe there's a lot of different reasons. People are going to start going, oh, okay, well, I have this to worry about now, or I'm doing this. Right. So what do you say to that?
Well, I would say I've heard this expression, and I don't remember who to credit this to, that the United States is good with, citizens of the United States are good with acute compassion, crisis compassion. We are not good with long-term, just general compassion. So we're compassionate to someone who's lost their home in a flood. There was a lot of compassion for Asheville, North Carolina, a while ago.
Yeah, but they're all mad.
Long-term compassion.
Yeah, they're all mad because we're getting all the attention. Yeah, that's a perfect example.
I don't know that they're mad that you're getting the attention.
No.
I think they're mad that there's no longer
news coverage
care
on that.
and attention on the fact that people in Asheville still don't have power. They still don't have clean water.
They're living in tents and they're angry. So that's exactly what I'm talking about, that this is going to turn into anger. right?
You know, and we don't have compassion for people who are poor,
No.
or who are living with disease, or who got long COVID. You know, now there's people who are long COVID or nursing it or milking it or something. We have a problem extending continued compassion to people who are struggling. So, you know, I think it's, you asked a little while ago about what people should do who want to move out of the area. Don't make long-term decisions now. I don't think that the state of California has and the US has a serious, there's a crisis here happening in California, and we need to get everybody safely through the crisis. And then we need to look at, what do we do about this? Similarly to Asheville, where I have friends who are, right in the middle of it and, without power for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, that is still a level of crisis. And we need to figure out how did this happen? Why aren't we taking care to make sure this doesn't happen? What are we going to do in the future to take care of people so that, homes aren't built where they shouldn't be, or we need to take, better protections to help communities,
There's so much information. Yeah. As far as, if there's anything else I missed, I really just wanted to do an episode just to talk about all these things, because I think there's just so many mixed feelings right now about everything. There's a lot of sadness. This is so fresh. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of the way, as an outsider that wasn't directly, affected by September 11th, everyone knew someone, that knew someone. Whereas here in LA, everyone knows someone that knows someone, or directly knows people that lost their homes. And I just think, I hope that people have compassion about this whole thing, because that's all we really need. It is just to be like we were after September 11th, where everybody let people go through in traffic. Like if you stopped at a stop sign and it was your turn, you'd be like, oh, hi. I found myself walking for the first time yesterday without smoke. And I was smiling at everybody and waving. I don't do that usually. I'm usually in a really bad mood when I walk. So more of that, right? And then if you have any other points you want to bring up, I'd love to hear them.
I mean, I think kindness costs us physiologically so much less than hostility. Like it takes a toll on our body to be carrying hatred, vitriol for other people, whatever their circumstances, whatever their political affiliations. I see people driving around with the big flags. He won, get over it, shut the F up. And I'm just like, oh, it's so sad for you that you're still carrying so much anger and hatred for people that voted differently than you. Like, ooh.
But that's what they're doing here. They're doing it to us.
I know,
because
that's just the example I've seen. That it's your fault because you voted the wrong, and it's just that the liberal blue state of California has brought this on themselves. Like, it hurts my heart to think of people that actually have that opinion. Or that are saying that out loud, because it's costing people to carry that kind of hatred and that kind of animosity and hostility. It's so much easier, and it's so much better for us to be kind and be in connection. Yeah.
P.S. I know a lot of people that voted for him, so we're not, like, especially in these areas, like, where the fires are in particular, there were a lot of people that voted for him. So that audience, like, all of us are human beings. We need to be respected, and be careful if you're listening of social media. I have to reiterate that, because people are trolling like there's so many bots and trolls right now on social media. And what it does is it just spirals you out and makes you more angry. So I think that if you're a victim of the fires, limit your social media because it's just so awful what people are saying. I can't imagine the additional layer that would add if I had just lost my home and then I see somebody on social media attacking me because I live in a blue state. It's just devastating.
Well, and I use that example. It goes in both directions.
In both directions.
Hostility. It goes in both directions.
Sure does.
And it's just better to seek out connection. It is healthier for us than it is to stay armed in our anger at others. And that isn't to say you can't be angry about what has happened. Anger is a valid feeling, but to seek connection rather than distance. And on the social media thing, I agree. I mean, social media is good for nobody, really. But you used the 9/11 example, and I remember sort of repetitively watching the footage over and over and over and over again, knowing it wasn't good for me. I was a therapist back then. I'm from New York, so it was my home state, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so there was a desire to have it like, is this true? Is this real? How can this, what am I seeing? And so there may be a repetitive, compulsive component to to reading the news, to looking at images on social media over and over and over again as a way to soothe, which sounds fucked up. And our brains are fucked up at many times. But
it's
I
like
just want to make sure.
It's like driving down the freeway looking at a car accident. We all do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just want to, it isn't the healthiest thing to do. Your advice is good. And I want to make sure that people know not to shame themselves in whatever way they're going through this, and to make sure that they get support to get through it. You don't have to do this on your own. You shouldn't attempt to do this on your own, even if you're facing shitty people that are whatever, politicizing or whatever to you. There are good people. Look to the helpers, as Mr. Rogers. I was about to call him Dr. Rogers again. He should have been a doctor.
I loved him.
Mr. Rogers, I know.
Saint. Yeah. There's good ones out there. And there are good people out there, but there are sadly also not good people.
Yes.
Something I wanted to say, like kind of as we close, and then I want I'm going to say where to find Carolyn because she's so wonderful. I might start a new podcast just with Carolyn and I. But I was going to say this story. So my mom and my sisters were out here, and we went like a couple days before the fire started. So I think the fire started on Wednesday. I might be wrong on that. I think it was Wednesday. And I had just gotten back on Monday or Sunday or Monday from wine country. So, Los Olivos, that area, because my uncle passed away in the fall, and we had a celebration of life of him. And he was my Uncle Pete. He was a great, great man. And so all the aunts and uncles were out here, and we had this wonderful time, lots of laughing, lots of happiness. But on the way to drive to the wine country, you have the choice to take the 101 and go the scenic route. And so I decided, my husband kept saying, why don't you go the scenic route? I'm going to get upset. Hold on. I've lived here 25 years. So remember that. I've lived here longer than anywhere else in my life. And there's nothing wrong with being emotional. This is an emotional situation. Yeah. I love Los Angeles. I love my town. I love California. And my husband said, you should go the scenic route with your mom and your sisters. You should go that way. And I said, it's going to take so much longer. I'm just not going to go that way. And my mom and my sisters were like, oh, but it'll be so pretty. We should go that way. And instead, I chose to take the 101 and just avoid the scenic route. And then the fires happened. And then I thought to myself the other night when I was up all night stressing about the fires hitting my city, how I missed my chance to see those places that I love so much, They were like, I'm talking about Malibu, like places that like I have gone. I've spent like time at Moon Shadows, and like there's all these historic landmarks on PCH. And I decided not to go that way. And so again, I'm getting upset. And again, I still feel guilty because I'm fine. My family's fine. But it is our city. It's our Los Angeles. It's California. It's my home. I love it. So my point of my ugly crying story was sometimes in life, if you have the choice to add time on and take the scenic route, just do it. Because we don't know how long we have in this world. We don't know how much longer we're going to be here. So just take the scenic route. Because we don't know if that scenic route will be here the next time you have the choice to get on the road and drive. And I'm sorry for the drama, but I just had to say that.
Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself.
I just had to say it because I truly regret it now. It's gone and they'll rebuild it. Like this is all going to come back. We're strong in our city. We've been through a lot.
And this is the power of connection. And I feel so honored and grateful that you shared that story. And I am certain there's a listener hearing that is evoking in them missing PCH or missing whatever it is that they're feeling. Somewhere, and you've just given them permission.
Somebody in Asheville or wherever we talked about.
You've given them permission to have their feelings. And it's important to say it. And you're exactly right. Take the time to look around you, look up from whatever it is you're doing and appreciate what you have. That is not to the exclusion of feeling sad or angry or hurt or whatever you're feeling in this moment, but to look around and to see what is in front of you, who is in front of you, and connect around that. Yeah. So there's incredible power in sharing these stories. And, you could facilitate the sharing of thousands of stories. Los Angeles will come out stronger. There's no question. And I hope that there's some beautiful collaboration about what has been lost and a sharing of that, some storytelling or picture sharing, something that comes out of this so that more people have the chance to share their experiences.
100%. Thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn, where can people find you as we close?
I'm a therapist in Washington State. So if people in Washington State want to find me for therapy, CarolynSharp.com is my website. If anybody in the world wants to coach with me for personal or relationship coaching, it's secureconnectionsretreats.com. And I'm on Instagram and for now, TikTok.
You're right.
Secure Connections Coaching. So look me up if that would be helpful, if I can be helpful in any way.
I love talking to you today. I'm so grateful. And the minute I reached out to you and I just said, can you do this? I know it's last minute. I really want to do this. I know somewhere out there needed to hear this. Thank you everyone for listening. We're going to get through this, California. We're going to get through this, Los Angeles. If you're listening, talk to your friends. The human connection is the most important thing that we have in life. It's the human connection. It's so, so, so important. So try to talk to someone. If you're struggling with your mental health or suicidal ideations, there's always hope and there's always help. So please reach out to someone. If you are in LA or California and you're looking for a therapist, schools like I talked to, there's lots of ways to find help right now. There's a lot, like Carolyn mentioned, there's a lot of people offering free therapy during this time. So there's a lot of resources out there. I'm going to try and post some when this episode comes out. In closing, keep going. You matter. Your story matters. Thanks, Carolyn.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.